Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to wherever you are watching or listening from. My name is Jamie Robinson, and welcome to episode 258 of the Wakefield Trinity Heritage Podcast, proudly sponsored by the New Inn Pub and Restaurant over in Walton, Wakefield. Cannot wait for this interview today, as we've been chasing this chap for a long, long time, and it's taken us a long time to nail him down, but we finally have. But before we bring him on, let me introduce my co-host, my dad, Lee Robinson. How are we doing, Dad?
Hello, and thank you for joining us again on the podcast for another interview with another firm fans' favourite from Trinity's Super League era. This week we talked to a big man both on and off the field. On the Rugby League field, he made 322 professional appearances and played 66 times for Trinity in his 3 years at Bellevue. Off the field, he is now a well-known television star, podcaster, YouTuber, and a groundbreaking Rugby League player in his own right. As Jamie says, we've been chasing this bloke for a long time, and I'm elated and chuffed to bits to have him on. This week we welcome Keegan Hirst. Keegan, thanks for joining us, mate.
Thank you for having us, gents. You made me sound like the Scarlet Pimpernel there. We seek him here, we seek him there. But no, I appreciate you having me on. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, you're just calming down yourself, Matty, with the internet problems and stuff. So I think you were just calming your nervous system down before we get into it as well.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. There's the perils of internet podcasts, eh?
Well, that's the thing. I see myself as quite a calm, patient bloke, but if there's one thing that riles me up, it's bad technology. I can't get used to that.
Yeah, what bad Wi-Fi is the cause of many an argument across the globe, I think.
Very much so. Keegan, like I said, this is episode 258 for us, which is crazy every time we come on. Obviously, we increase that by one. We've had a shed load of guys on and girls actually for interviews over the years. And every time we've interviewed someone, we've asked them the same first question. So we're going to ask you that same first question as well. So what's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the words Wakefield Trinity?
Um, Good time. I had a really good time at Wakefield. I For me, Wakefield was very much. I know things are very different now with the investment and the stadium and everything, but when I was at Wakefield, that was not the case, and it was very much like the Batley Bulldogs of Super League. And people can make of that what they will, but I mean, I am a Batley lad. I was lucky enough to captain Batley Bulldogs in that, and again, loved my time at Batley as well. And when I came to Wakefield, I got a very similar vibe, and I think something that typifies both clubs, and I think why I felt a real connection with both clubs was because well, again, not the case now, but not cash rich, but they were rich in people, the quality of the people that were at the club, the characters that were in and around. I mean, rugby league is notorious for the characters that we have in the game, not just the players, but the staff and the fans and the kit men and everybody that's involved. But you know, I. I felt very welcomed at Wakefield. I felt it was the first club that I'd been at since coming out. Obviously, came out when I was at Batley, and then I went to Wakefield a year or so after, and I was a bit trepidatious, to put it lightly, about how that was going to be. Obviously, I had my feet very firmly under the table at Batley, but not so much at Wakefield. But I needn't have worried. Danny came on, was captain, and was absolutely fantastic, and so were the rest of the lads and the backroom staff. So I loved my time at Wakefield. I really did enjoy it. And it was, the fulfilling of a dream that I'd always had to play Super League, and I'd flirted with it throughout my career. I never really backed myself to go all in, and I was always a bit of doubt about whether I could do it. And, the year that I went to Wakey, I kind of set a goal to get signed up by a full-time team. That was the goal, and I managed to do it. I had a couple of offers, but I went to Wakey. The John Keir connection, I think, got it over the line. But yeah, good times. That's what a long-winded way of me saying Wakefield equals good times.
And obviously we linked up with you recently. You came back for the Hall of Fame dinner and you attended that in your own right as well. It's just a very welcoming club. Obviously we've been fans for all our entire lives, but it just seems like a very welcoming, working class homely club. Does Trinity?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you're a club that, it has limited resources, for want of a better phrase, if you've got anything about you, then you look after the people that keep the club going. Whether it's people like yourselves and, Lee, all the hard work you do with the heritage stuff and the past players stuff and, all the volunteers that clubs have. And, this was a conversation I actually had with a friend of mine who used to play rugby as well. And we were talking about how there's not so many people who volunteer anymore. It's a generational thing, and what's going to happen to clubs when people stop volunteering? Because I mean, there's an argument for both sides, right? You want to give back to your club, and you want to volunteer, but also, people should be paid for their time. So there is an evolution, I guess, of society and sport, and how clubs are run. But I think if you are a club that looks after your people, whether they be the people on the field or the people in the stands, it goes a long way to keep that club going. And I think that's something that Wake has diced to death a few times over the years, hasn't it? And it's always survived, and it's always because it's been able to pull together as a unit, the people on the field, the people in the back room, the people in the stands, and and is now doing really well. I know not off to a great start for 2026, but the club is in a much better position than it's been in for a long, long time, and that's because it's been able to ride the storm because of the people that are involved.
Couldn't agree more. Well, but we need to clip that and put that out on our social media channels as to why we're such an attractive club as well now. Because it's difficult. Because like you say, it is a club in transition and still in transition, and it might be a club in the future where we're not seen as that club in peril anymore, and we're seen as Matt Ellis with all this money and a brand new stand and big time international players. But we don't want to lose that charm, do we, of being an old school working class club.
Yeah, and it is easy to do that, isn't it? It's easy to people have short memories. It's easy to forget who was there in the rough times and the tough times, and I think. Even not to blow smoke up your arse, Lee, but the stuff that you do with the past players, that's the kind of stuff that keeps that, close knitness of the club, the former players, the current players. Even, me coming down to the Hall of Fame in the last year. It was, really good to catch up with some of the lads that I've played with or played against, who've been at Wakefield over the years, and it is always nice to get rugby players in a room together because it is always a good vibe, but it's always important to keep that close knitness, and because it's so easy when there's money involved for people to just kind of go off and do their own thing and forget about the little things that make rugby league what it is. It is we don't have lots of money, we don't have lots of advertisement, we don't have smart people in charge of the game. I'll put that out there. But what we do have is almost a siege mentality of, we believe in what we're about, and what we do, and where we come from, and what we're about, and we're able to club together with that. And I think that is really important to remember. If we were to be lucky enough to have, as a sport, an injection, a load of cash, it'd be easy to, forget about that, and it becomes soulless like football. And you get your Jim Ratcliffe's stopping ex-players having meals at, at their club that they
Mhm.
played for, and all stuff like that. So I think it is really important to remember that. But also, the flip side of that is it's important to embrace, the future and change, because something that we can be guilty of in rugby league is using tradition as a barrier for progression, and going, well, we've always done this, and we've always done this, and we've always done this. But if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got, and I don't think any of us want that. So there is a balance to be struck. I think it's important to be able to pay homage to the people and the clubs and the game that has gone before us, but it's also important to remember the world as it is, because we can't operate in the world that was.
I love that. Brilliant. Keegan, let's rewind a bit all the way to 13th of February 1988. Tell us about your upbringing, your childhood, and kind of those core memories from your early days and what they made you who you are today.
Um, I I was this might not surprise a lot of people. I was not very good at sport as a kid. I was overweight. I was, and I still proudly I'm a very nerdy, geeky person. I'd much rather read Lord of the Rings than go and play out on the street and on my bike and stuff, which took me a long time to learn to ride my bike. Finesse is not necessary, and balance is not necessarily. Well, we've all seen me play, right? So yeah, I wasn't particularly sporty. I was always a big kid. And I remember I was playing out in the front garden actually. I grew up on a council estate in Batley, single parent family. I'm the eldest of three, and this minibus pulled out up outside. I was about 11 years old, and guy winds the window down. And he says, "Keegan, you getting in with me?" And I thought, "Oh, this is it. This is the stranger that my mum's been on about." So went round the back of the house, told my mum. She said she assured me I wasn't about to be mad axe murdered, and she said it's the coach from Batley Boys. His son was in my year at school, and he'd seen me in the playground and thought he's a big lad, he'll be able to play. Anyway, so I got in, went to practice, and I was awful. I was awful, like hand-eye coordination, rotten, like unfit. But I loved it. Loved just being with the other lads, and we had a good laugh. And we used to train up at Mount Pleasant actually, where Batley Bulldogs play, which is an inhospitable place. It's cold and it's windy and it's miserable, but I loved it. And that was about when I was probably about 11 years old then. Um, it took me weeks to even get muddy. I was just not cut out for rugby at all. And then puberty was very good to me. About 14, 15, came back after a break, and I was tall, I was athletic, I could catch, I could run. And people, yeah, I think people thought I was a ringer or something, but started playing well, and and that was kind of how I got into Huddersfield Scholarship, Bradford Academy, and then I went on to play for Dewsbury Rams. I think I made my debut when I was 17 or 18. Like I said, I was always a big kid. So it took, it kind of helped me go through the process there. But yeah, grew up in Batley, small town mentality. My mum was very much old school. Don't stick your head above the parapet too much. You don't want to draw unnecessary attention. You should go, you grow up, you get married, you have kids, you go on holiday, for 2 weeks a year, and you should be grateful for your lot. And it was very much that kind of mentality growing up, and I think that played a big part in me struggling with coming out and all things like that later on in life. But it was, I did, it wasn't the easiest of childhoods. I've never met my dad. My mum wasn't particularly emotionally available, but you just kind of do what you do, and you get on with it. And I found myself finding father figures throughout rugby league with various different coaches, and as I know lots of lads do. And I something that I'll never forget this, and I never really thought about it until we did it. But I remember one year when I was at Feathers. I love being part of a team. I've always loved being part of a team, and I've always thought that the team succeeding was more important than my own personal successes. And I remember when I was playing for Featherstone, sorry, and we did a pre-season meeting. This guy came in, he was some kind of psychologist or something. As a rugby player, you get these people coming in, you forget with it. But sometimes some of the stuff sticks. And this guy had asked us to kind of visualize what a successful season looked like. And he asked if he asked us to put our hands up if a successful season was like the club getting to the grand final, which was what our goal was. And everybody put their hand up. And then he said, put your hand up if you feel like if you have to choose between the club succeeding or you having a really amazing season personally, Put your hand up if you'd rather have personally an amazing season. And everybody apart from two of us, it was me and George Flanagan, and I'll never forget. We were the ones who didn't put our hands up because we were like, well, we'd rather the team do well. And I'm not saying that as like I'm better than everybody else, but I think it's indicative of how much I've always loved being a part of a team and being in and around rugby, and even when I've not been able to play and like I've volunteered to run the water and stuff like that. I just love being in and around the group. I think it's very powerful to all be plumbing towards the same thing. And I think that's why so many people get in 2026 feel lonely and feel despondent with the state of the world because everybody's pulling in all different directions with everything. And I think that that's something that I've always taken solace in with rugby.
You've sort of answered my first question. My first question was what was your first experience in rugby league? Was it watching it, playing it, or in the backyard? And you've answered it.
Well, do you know what?
A bloke turned up in his minibus, didn't he, and took you away?
It was actually I had been to see rugby before that. A friend of mine, we're still best friends now, 30 years on. He used to play rugby, and I would ask him about it every weekend. And I'd be like, "All right, that sounds good. Oh yeah." Anyway, he was a big Bradford Bulls fan, and his mum and dad were big Bradford Bulls fans, and they asked me if I wanted to go with them. And it was the year that Bradford were playing up at Valley Parade because they were doing something at Odsal. And I remember they played Leeds. And I remember because I remember thinking how big Darryl Fleary's legs were, and I couldn't believe that that was a human being. And they smacked him like 40 odd points to something. But that was my first thing. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like I get it. And then Richard came and took me to training, and then I kind of got into it. And then as I grew up, I don't know how we did it, but we used to get free tickets for the Bradford games. So when I was about 15, 16, every Sunday we'd go up to Odsal and watch the games up there. But yeah, so my first one was actually going to a game, and then just by chance, really, I got suckered in.
Why the changes? Obviously, you started at Batley Boys, you ended up at Huddersfield Scholarship, Bradford Bulls. Why the change of clubs? Did it not work at Huddersfield? Did it not work at Bradford before you went to Dewsbury?
Yeah, so with Huddersfield, yeah, they just said we don't think you're ready to go up to the academy, which is their prerogative, I guess. That's rugby league. And then I went back to playing, and then Bradford came in and said, "Well, we think you are," and took me into their under 18s, and offered. They called it full time. It wasn't full time. You went to college part of the time. Then some of the time you were cannon fodder for the first team on a Tuesday. I remember it well. Because I always remember Nobby saying, "Don't worry about breaking, and we'll get some more."
Mhm.
Genuine. That is verbatim what he said. And yeah, they didn't. They just paid us. I think we got like 35 quid if you won a match. But yeah, we were. Again, that was a great time, and we did all right. I mean, we had Sam Burgess was playing in our under 18s. He was playing above his age, but he played with us, and then he went on to the first team. And with Bradford, what they did, they changed all the structure. So they used to be able to have like I don't know what it was. It was like 35 people in the first team squad. And then they reduced it. So they essentially, because they reduced the number of people that you could have in the first team squad, they reduced all the numbers that you could have in all the academies as well. So they were just like, if you can find another, like if we've not spoken to you, then you're not definitely going to get a place here, but you're not definitely going to get booted. So if you can find another club, then do that. And then I knew Ryan Sheridan. And he was cut. He was, I think he'd just finished playing up at Dewsbury. And to be fair to Shez had always really believed in me as a player and was like, I think you got some good stuff coming your way, and we'd like to give you a shot at Dewsbury. And Dewsbury actually paid me real money as well. So I was like, 18 years old and whatever they were paying a win, 350 quid or whatever, I was like, fucking get in. So I went in the shot and Andy Kelly was the coach and he gave me my debut. I don't know who it was against. Maybe you've got that
Got it,
information.
mate. Oldham, February 2007.
There you go, February 2007. So
This
yeah,
game stands out to me. I don't remember the game, but I remember the story because you were in the front row and your other two front rowers, you're all teenagers.
well,
Yeah.
uh, yeah,
Luke Haig and Dominic Maloney, you were all 18, 19 years old in the front
yeah,
row.
yeah. They were both a year older than me. Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, and then had a bit of time at Dewsbury. Then uh, Kel said, "No, I don't think this is for you." Went to Hunslet, then went back to Dewsbury. Warren Jowett took me back to Dewsbury, and then we had like some amazing seasons. We went unbeaten with Dewsbury. Excuse me. Um, we got promoted and did pretty well, and then Batley came knocking, and Batley always got. It was the period where Batley were getting top side of Dewsbury all the time, and it was also a bit closer. And I thought I'm going to go, and I think I'd played for Dewsbury. We played against Hull in the Challenge Cup, and JK was the coach at Hull. Um, or was it Wakefield actually? I don't know. I know JK had been the coach somewhere and I'd played really well in the cup, and there was like rumours that he was after me. And then he went to Batley, and then it was like, come to Batley. Uh, and that's when me and JK's love affair started.
I'm always interested, Keegan, when I hear stories of people being battered back from scholarship and academy and stuff. Just the story of like resilience and adversity. As a kid at the time, and you were a kid, obviously everyone's a kid at that age. What was your mindset of just being, Huddersfield saying we don't think you're good enough. You go to Bradford. Brian Noble says something like that. Were you a kid who could move on quite quickly, or did it stick with you with these quote unquote failures?
Um, I think, yeah, I think it definitely sticks with you, but I think at that point, like I loved playing rugby. It wasn't a job yet, and there wasn't as much as you want to play well. You also just love playing rugby. So it was like, oh well, it's not worked out. I'd never set out to be a professional rugby league player. I'd never set out to be. I always did well. I did well at school. I thought I was going to end up being like a lawyer or something. So I didn't think I was going to be a professional rugby league player. I didn't think I was good enough. And so any kind of advances that I got with, whether it was a scholarship or academy, I was like, I'm just happy to be here. Like I honestly, people have told me I was shit throughout my career. So I was like, oh, all right, well, I'll just, if people are willing to pick me and pay me, then I'm willing to do it. So obviously you get disappointed because sometimes you see other people and you go, oh, well, I feel like I've done a better job than them. But something that I always did, and I don't have any shame in saying this is, I played Super League where there were players who I've played with and against who were better rugby league players than me, 100%. But I've always taken feedback from coaches. I've always implemented. I've been punctual. I've not been a dick. All the stuff that have been in my control, I've always nailed those. And I've got better as a player because of it, because I was willing to accept that I wasn't the best player and there were people who knew more than me and be able to take that and improve my game as the years have gone on. And I certainly did that, at Wakefield. Like Lee Gilmore was great for me. Like as much as Lee doesn't necessarily communicate very well all the time. Like as someone who knows about rugby league, there's not many people who know more about the intricacies of rugby league than Lee Gilmore. And he took a real shine to me when I was at Wakey and taught me a lot. And I think that was something that I've always done throughout my career that's always helped me progress. But yeah, any kind of rejection is difficult to take, but it's you either curl up in a ball and go, well, this is it, or you just have to do your best and bat on. And I just found myself doing that to the best of my ability.
The number of people we've interviewed on this podcast who haven't had such a linear, quote unquote, normal progression through rugby league. People have been battered back, gone down to the lower leagues, come back, had an injury, gone down, come back, and you're the same, aren't you, as well? It's crazy, isn't it? Your story of your career, anybody's career, isn't an easy process.
No, and there's so many twists and turns. You think, oh, get into academy, 16s, 18s, 21s, first team, stay there for 10 years, get a testimonial, play a couple of different clubs, go somewhere else, finish. Like the people who have that career, you can count on your fingers and toes. It's a funny old injuries pop up, and it's not just injuries to you, it's injuries to people who you think. Sometimes you sign at a club and you go, I'm not going to get in here. And then someone gets injured, and before you know it, then you've played every game. You have a really good season, and someone else's injury is the trajectory that changes your career. You see that so often, or you see someone falling out of favour at another club, and it means that someone comes to your club, and it's nothing exists in isolation. You have to be able to roll with the punches, and it was something I've always spoken to the younger players about as I was getting older, is people would sulk when you'd get dropped for a game, or you'd miss out, or like it's a long old season and it's a long old career. I know, like now I can sit there and go, it went by so fast, but you play so many games, there's so many opportunities, there's so many training sessions, games where things can go wrong, where go, things can go right for you. Like if you get caught up with just like one thing not going your way, you're just going to be in your head all the time. And that was something I certainly did when I was playing when I was younger. Like if I made a mistake in a game, like I was cooked. But as you get older and become more mature and play more and be around, better players and more mature players, you start to pick up that kind of stuff. So yeah, like no one's career is linear, and that's part of the beauty of it, is that it can take an unexpected turn.
Was there ever a point in those early, Dewsbury days and Hunslet days where you just thought, forget this, I'm going to go get a job and,
Yeah,
do whatever?
100%. I nearly went and joined the army actually after Kel got rid of me. I was like, I don't fucking need this. Like, is it paying that well? Is it? But there's always, well, for me, there was always yeah, but what if?
Hmm.
What if it comes good? What if, like, the eternal optimist? Um, and and so I was like, no, I'm not going to throw the towel in just yet until like all my options are exhausted. I'm gonna because again, even when I was younger, you still love it.
Hmm.
I think it's not until when it's a really funny one, but when you go full time, it that's when it becomes your job, and that's when you suddenly go, oh, it's my job, and I have to go to work.
Hmm.
Whereas even when I was playing part time, and I had another job as well. I still loved going to rugby, even though, sometimes if you were getting bashed up on a Monday night after you've not played well on a Sunday, you're like, and a long day at work, you're like, I don't need this. But it still felt like something that, you could drop if you wanted to, because you had another job, right? It was just
Hmm.
my ex-wife used to say it's just a well-paid hobby. I was like, it's not, it's a bit more than that, but I see where she's coming from. Uh, but yeah, so I think while ever you've still got a love for the game, it's important to stick with it.
Yeah. Personally, obviously, you've just touched on your ex-wife there. Personally, what stage were you at, kind of emotionally at this point? In your late teens, early 20s as well, going through early rugby career, part-time career, working off the field. What was life like away from the field at that point?
Um, it was all right. To be fair, I was working as a joiner. I did my apprenticeship, qualified as a joiner. I met my ex-wife when I was 19. Um, and she was a few years older than me, and she was pregnant within, I don't know, 6 months of us meeting. So it was a bit of a crash bang wallop, really. My daughter was born when I was 20. We'd moved in together. And then, I think from like on a personal point of view, from a personal thing, like I'd always, thought that, been taught that, told that, you grow up, you get married, you have kids, you da 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 da, doing it, and growing up, through the 90s, gay people were only ever exclusively effeminate and camp and, you know, your Elton Johns and I know what I look like and I know what I
Not
sound
not not
like.
from Batley.
Not from Batley, although apparently I did an interview once and said, "Oh, there were no gay people in Batley." I got quite a lot of people reach out and say, "I'm gay, I'm from Batley," so they must have all been hiding somewhere. But yeah, exactly that. So it was very much, we talk about how important representation matters. It's important to be able to see people who are like you on TV, in sport, doing the things that you'd like to be able to do, whether that's to do with color of your skin, your religion, your sexuality, whatever it is. And there was none of that. Like, there just was none of that. So I was like, well, I can't be gay, or I don't want to be gay if I am, or because then that means I can't play rugby, or you have these very black and white ideas of, or I did certainly had these very black and white ideas. It has to be one or the other. You can't be this if you're that. Like there was no nuance. So I just thought it'll go away, or I'll just bury it down deep, and that kind of worked for a few years. We ended up getting married. My son was born when I was about 24. And then after that, like shit hit the fan, like my mental health, like I just, I couldn't, I couldn't bury it. I felt like I was living, I don't want to say living a lie, but because it's not like I had a double life going on or anything, but I was just, I felt like I built myself this life that on the outside, people would look at and go, well, that's amazing. You have a young family, you have a rugby career that's, on the up, and you should be really pleased. So I felt guilt and shame about not feeling pleased about that, because I was like, I don't know if this is me. I don't know if this is what I want. I have these feelings that I'm not talking about, daren't talk about. What does that mean? And so I like it had a massive impact on my mental health. I drank a lot, took drugs, stayed out of the house. I was not a good husband. I was not a good dad. I was not a nice person to be around, and that just understandably eroded our relationship. It also didn't have a great impact on my rugby career as well, um, until it got to a point where I was like, I can't do this. And well, we kind of agreed we didn't want the kids thinking that this was a relationship or our relationship should be. So we called time on it. When I was about, I think I was 27. And then with a bit of distance and being away from the house and not having this kind of pressure that I felt that I'd had, I kind of accepted that I was gay, but I struggled to even, I couldn't even say the words out loud. Like it would literally stick in my throat. And then I thought, right, okay, well, that kind of explains why I've been behaving like I have, but what do I do about it? Can I tell anybody? And Gareth Thomas had come out at this point. I know Ian Roberts had come out in Australia years ago, but if I'm being honest, I didn't know anything about Ian Roberts. And Gareth Thomas just felt like, well, that's rugby union. He didn't have any kids. That just felt like something totally different. He also came out at the end of his career. I was 27, and so I was like, what do I do? Can I do anything? And um, and honestly, I was kind of at rock bottom. Before I came out, I'd considered taking my own life. I was like, it was like that. It was that grim. And I don't say that glibly. I've spoken about it a lot, but it was. If I hadn't had kids, I wouldn't be here. Like I can confidently say that, and thank God that I do, because I have a nice life now. But it really was touch and go. And then I thought, well, I can't. And I've tried to not be honest with myself and other people, so I'm gonna tell people. And I told my ex-wife first. She was understandably upset. I told my mum, who didn't take it well. I've not spoken to my mum properly in over 10 years. Um, my dad was never around, so I didn't have him to tell. So at that point, it wasn't going particularly well, but I still felt like I was doing the right thing. And then I told a couple of lads at rugby, and I didn't need to tell all the other lads then, because rugby league players can't hold their own piss. So it went around like wildfire. And then I spoke. JK was the coach at Batley. I spoke to JK, and I'll never ever forget what JK said. I spoke to him on the phone, and he said, I don't care if you're gay or cock. You're a rugby league player, and you're my captain, and that's all that matters to me. Um, kind of gets me a bit upset, like happy tears, like because that was like relief. Then I thought, I'm going to be all right. And Kevin Nicholson at the Nicholas, sorry, at the club at Batley was fantastic. The club were great, and then so that was that really, and then it kind of got out. Um, because of rugby and people gossiping. And then within a couple of weeks, JK had said that some papers are going to run a story on it. So it might be worth getting in front of it. And obviously, I was going through a divorce. I had two young kids. And I ended up doing an interview with the Sunday Mirror, I think it was. And it was Batley used to play once a year. They were playing a pink kit
Yeah, okay.
to raise money for Beverly, who's Kevin's wife, who sadly passed away now from breast cancer. She had breast cancer multiple times, and she used to do the pink weekend to raise money for breast cancer. So this particular weekend, we were playing a pink kit, and that was when the story broke. So there was loads of journos at the game, and all the pictures were me in a pink kit, and I was like, do you know what? What an entrance into the public eye. But then after that, like it was a bit wild then for a while. But yeah, it was again not what you would call a linear regular path of kind of coming to terms with your own sexuality.
Did you always know? Was it always a thing from being a young lad and a teenager? You always had these that you always
I,
knew you were that way.
yeah, I think so. In retrospect, I think I always remember my mum saying to me, when you go through puberty, everything's a bit weird. Like, your body will change, people do weird stuff, like it's normal. So I was like, oh, maybe we're all just like feeling like this and we're just not saying anything. Um, I do like I remember being on the back of the bus once, and the lads were talking about girls that they fancied, and there was like Nuts and Zoo magazine and stuff, and so they were talking about how they fancied like Kelly Brooks and Nell McAndrew and things like that. And I was like, I didn't have, believe it or not, I didn't have any interest in Nuts or Zoo magazine. And then they were like, Keegan, who do you fancy? So I was like, fuck, I don't know. Who am I supposed to say? So I said, Carol Vorderman. Um, and they were like, from Countdown. But do you know what? I stand by that. I actually stand by that. She looks well for however old she is. So, I did know, but I didn't acknowledge it. I didn't know what to do with it. Um, and again, I just because no one was saying anything about it, I was like, maybe I'm a bit weird and I should, not talk about it. But yeah, I think in retrospect, yeah, I probably knew when I was about 13, 14.
Hmm. What was kind of you've mentioned Batley. What was the rugby league community like? What was I was going to say kind of flashback, but what was it the feedback like for you coming out?
Everybody was fine. There's like a couple of instances where I can remember people shouting stuff in the crowd. I always remember we played away at Featherstone. I thought I'm going to get absolutely rinsed here, and I didn't. Credit to Featherstone fans, but I didn't. But there was a couple. The only one that I can really remember specifically was when I was at Wakey actually.
Ah,
And we were playing Cass, believe it or not, at home. And I went to warm up, and that little stand that was, if you're looking from the block of flats, on the little stand that was there
hmm.
that just had a roof over it. Obviously it was Cass and Wakey, it was rammed. And I remember I was warming up. And you get, oh, here he is, all that kind of like regular stuff that everybody would get. Yo, you shit, no, Hurst, you shit, da, 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 da. And then I remember someone shouted, Hurst, you fucking puff. And it all went quiet. It all went quiet. And all the cast, because the cast fans had got done, hadn't they, before for
Yeah.
Gareth Thomas years and years ago. And it all went really quiet. And I remember, and I just turned and I looked in the general direction and I went, flirt. And winked, and they all started laughing then, and I got a little bit of a clap from that. So, but that was, yeah, and I never got any stickers of play. Like I would, I thought I, there's so many opportunities where you could, and you do say stuff, try to get top side of people or get under people's skin or whatever. But nobody ever, to their credit, nobody ever said anything about that, which was, was a nice thing.
Is it right Elton John phoned you up, or is that just social media talk?
No, Elton John did call me. Yeah.
Wow.
Tell us about that. That's amazing.
It's one of James Brown's favorites favorite stories. I'd It was the day after the story broke in the on the in the on the in the Sunday Mirror, and I had a call, a London number. I had lots of calls that day, and I didn't. One was a lady and it was a London number, and she said, "This is so and so. It's Elton John's assistant or PA. He'd like to ring you. Is that okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, sure, of course it is." I thought it's one of the lads.
Yeah.
Got their missus here, have me on. Anyway, then I got this, had this phone call, and it's, where it tells you where it's from, the call is from.
Mm.
It said Nice, and I was like, must be PPE. And I didn't answer it, and then I thought, nah, PPE aren't ringing from Nice. Who'd be what Nice? So I rung back, and then obviously this French guy said, really thick French accent, and I was like, I've just had a phone call. It's Keegan Hirst. And he was like, hang on a minute. And then next minute, hi Keegan, it's Elton here. Da, 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 da. And we probably spoke for about half an hour. And then we exchanged emails like we email every so often, even still all these years later. So he was always lovely. There were loads of people who were really, really nice. Anthony Cotton reached out, and me and Anthony have been best friends for like 10 years now. My kids call him and his partner Peter Uncle Ant and Uncle Pete. They used to come down to Wakey all the time to watch me, and there's a few people. Ian McKellen was always really lovely. I actually saw him at the weekend, and I remember the first time I met Anthony and Ian. They'd invited me over for dinner just before Manchester Pride, and I was driving a Peugeot 306 at the time. I went over, we had dinner, and they'd had a drink. Obviously, I was driving, so I'd not had a drink. And they said, are we going to go home now? And I said, I've got my car, I can drop you off if you want. Thinking that they would say no. And they went, all right then. So I had Gandalf in the front, I had Sean and Corey in the back, and Ian had just finished filming Beauty and the Beast at the time. And they were all singing Beauty and the Beast songs in the car while I was dropping them off. It was a very surreal experience.
And you just touched on it there. I'm going to rewind. Did you say you was with Ian McKellen at the weekend?
Yeah, on Friday I was at an event for Attitude magazine, and Ian was there, and I was chatting to him. I've been to Ian's house a few times. Is honestly one of the most lovely men you could ever hope to meet. Very generous with his time, and he's actually, you like this. He has got my first Wakefield shirt that I've got that was framed. I always said thank you to Anthony, because Anthony kind of looked after me and took me under his wing when I came out, and he always said that Ian had kind of done that for him, and Ian had always said to Anthony that it's important to pass on the baton. And that's what Anthony had always said that he'd done to me. I've passed the baton on, and then there'll be someone, and you'll pass the baton on to them. And so when I finished my first season at Wakefield, that shirt is my most prized shirt. My first Super League shirt. Da, da, da. So I got it framed, and at the plaque at the bottom says "Thank you for passing the baton," and that shirt is hung up in Ian McKellen's house.
You're joking.
Wow.
Yeah, so he's got some Lowrys up there that have a few bob, and then he's got my Wakefield shirt. Yeah.
And it's been one hell of a journey since, mate. Hasn't it? You sat, obviously, if you're on YouTube, you can see what's behind you. The game man's the game your game man's sort of coaching.
Yeah.
It's been 11 years, hasn't it, mate? What a journey you've been on since.
Yeah, it's been a funny one. And yeah, GMC is kind of me passing the baton a little bit, with the helping people, build the confidence, the physique, and just being comfortable in their own skin. It's taken me a long time to be able to do that, and it was quite difficult having to try and figure it out whilst being in the in the public eye. But it's certainly been an interesting 11 years. But I genuinely I can't really remember life before it. It seems like a bit of a blur, to be honest. Um, but it's interesting throughout both periods of my life, before coming out and after coming out. Rugby league's always been a constant, and still go watch now. I mean, me and Chris Anakin have been on about coming down to a Wakey game, and I have a couple of mates who play for Bradford, and I still go down to Batley. So, you see me see me around when it comes to rugby league. I'll go and watch it. Any of my old clubs, but it's always been a bit of a constant for me. Yeah.
Your social channels are massive as well, mate. Do you find a lot of people flood to you as a good example and a great representative of the gay community?
I would, well, I try. I tries. I mean, lots of people, people would much rather pick fault with things than agree with things sometimes. But I think something that I've always tried to do, maybe not as well as I would have liked, but I've always tried to do is, especially since coming out, is to live as authentically and with as much integrity as possible, even if that means having difficult conversations and saying things that people don't necessarily want to hear. And I think, that's part of why, I've been captain at clubs, or I've certainly been in, senior leadership groups at clubs and things, is because it's not always easy to tell people what they don't want to hear but needs to be said. And I've always tried to do that on my content. I've always tried to do that as with my own coaching. I've always tried to do that with the relationships that I have now. And I think people do resonate with that. People will often tell me that my content is quite blunt and to the point. I actually think I sugarcoat quite a lot of stuff that I say. So, but yeah, I think so. I think some people will look at my content and say, don't agree with anything that it's saying, and then some people, look at it and really resonate with it. It's you can take it or leave it. That's there's so many people, there's so much shit on the internet that you can go and watch that you don't have to. It's a lot easier to flick over than it is to send a shitty comment to someone. So yeah, I just try my best. I try to the content that I put out is is basically for me from about 10 years ago. It's what I needed to hear, what I needed to see, the conversations that I needed to have, and I try to do that as much as I can.
Love that, mate. We'll touch back on that, but we'll just float back to Batley as well. 128 games you played at Batley, 13 tries, which is pretty good going for a front rower as well. Tell us about that whole experience at your whole hometown club and captaining your hometown club as well.
Yeah, yeah, I loved it. Like I said, I went there because JK had asked me to go there, and I got off to a bit of a ropey start, to be honest, because Alex Walmsley came in out of nowhere. It's one of those things, it was like it was going to be me and Baz Smith were going to be starting forwards and da 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 da, and Alex Walmsley came out of nowhere and absolutely ripped it up, and so I found myself sitting on the bench. Um, understandably so, like he absolutely killed it and has, carried on doing that for however many years. So it was off to a bit of a ropey start, but then, yeah, it started. We almost got relegated, and then we turned it around really. I don't. JK just kind of worked his magic, and I remember. One year we had our first game was Lee at home, and Lee had spent loads of money. They'd got Rangi Chase, and they'd spent a load of money, and they were talking about how they were going to go unbeaten all season. And JK was like, "Don't even think about the season. We're going to beat Lee. First game of the season, we're going to beat Lee." And like we all believed it, and we all subscribed to it, and we ended up beating them. And it was the only game that they lost all season.
Wow.
And yeah, that year we had an amazing year. We had a couple of amazing years at Batley. We had the year where we got to the grand final. We lost to Sheffield in the final, and we'd beaten Featherstone and Lee in both and Golden Point in the quarters and the semis. Um, I got really badly concussed in the final, but it was yeah, it was such a good week in the build up to it. And then we had the year where we finished third in the league when they did the Super Eights. And that was just that was the year before I came to Wakefield actually, and that was just an incredible season. We did, like my biggest thing that I talk about from rugby is that I captained Batley to the highest finish in the club's history, and it's something that I'm really proud of. And playing away at Leeds on a Friday night as a someone who's not playing Super League, like that was, and we played really well as well. Like it was,
15,000 turned up that day as well.
yeah, it was a great night. It was, don't get me wrong, there were some difficult ones. We got smacked away at Hull KR, and but it was such a good experience and so good for the club and had such a big impact. And personally, I had a great season as well. So, I loved Batley. I loved again the lads. We didn't have much, but we had each other. And something that JK is very good at, which he's done at all the clubs that he's at, is and I always remember how he described it. He said, "What you get when you go to a rugby team is you get a load of puzzle pieces to a puzzle." And he said, "You can either try to make it into a picture that you want it to be, that it might not be, or you can try and turn it into the thing that it is and make the pieces fit in the way that they're meant to fit." Um, I always remember that because he didn't try and make us play in, a particularly fancy way or anything, or and he knew. And to be fair to JK, he had come from a full-time environment to a part-time environment, and we had to say to him early doors, like, we're not full-time here. You need to wind it in. And he did. To his credit, he did, and he kind of got to grips with it. So yeah, Batley was it was a great club, great fans, great not a great pitch.
It's difficult in it that level currently with with what's been happening at Salford, Featherstone, Halifax now as well.
Yeah,
Whereas Batley just seem to always bat above their average. They get good crowds. They always have a great reputation for a great entertainment and match day experience, great food. Always have a really competitive team, and never have a big flashy owner. Never overspend and really struggle that side of things. They're just a good old-fashioned traditional club that have a really good reputation about them, and I still think they do now as well.
yeah, definitely. I mean, Kevnik has done a great job. I mean, and they love the club. They love the club, and they always put the club first. And they were there's no boom and bust there. I remember when we got to the grand final, and few of us had asked for pay rises. Well, most of us had asked for pay rises, and they were like, we can't afford." And I was like, "Well, it means that a load of us are going to leave because we were getting offered. I think I got offered double to go to Featherstone,
Wow.
and I was like, I don't want double. I'd stay for a lot less. Like, I just want a bit of a pay rise." And they were like, "We can't do it. We can't do it." And they did that to loads of the lads. A load of the lads left after the grand final year. And it was because they weren't, uh, rightly or wrongly, I don't know. You could say, well, would they have had more success and built on that? Or, financially, did they look after themselves? I mean, the club's still going now. So, and has had successes since then. So you would say that it was the right decision. So I think they've always put the club first, even, if there's been a whiff of, well, we could take a gamble here. But they've not gambled with a club, and Kev's stewardship of it has been, fantastic, and they've had some great coaches over the years, and they've had some great successes. With even with Wembley with Linners, and the grand final with Linners, and the successes they had with JK as well. So yeah, they've managed the club really well.
And then came the step up. You've mentioned it already to Wakefield Trinity. Your first shot at Super League in the big time. What was that internal feeling like of like, oh my God, I'm at a Super League club now?
Um, I remember being a bit was kind of in my shell really about it. And like as a player, I was always very vocal. That was like part of what made me a good team player was communication is really important. And I remember one training session, and I'm really good friends with Matty Ashurst now. We used to travel together, but I should have shouted at him basically in training. And Jake, I remember Jake going, "Stop! Stop! Fucking stop!" And he makes all the sessions stop. And he like chewed me out in front of everybody. And he was like, "You're not a fucking championship player now. You're a Super League player. So stop thinking that you are a championship player and you can't shout at him. You can shout at him." Because you're the same as him, and you're the same as him, and you're the same as him, and so obviously I went bright red, and I was like, "Fucking hell." Um, but after that, I was like, right, I have to, I'm here and I have to, take up space kind of thing. Um, and once I got in, I think it took a few rounds to get in. I think my Super League debut was against Lee, if I remember rightly, at home. I had blonde hair because we had a thing in the off season where if you wore the wrong kit or whatever, you had to do a spin and it'd land on something, you either had to pay in X amount of money to the kitty or do what it said. And some of it was like, have a teaspoon of cinnamon or do whatever, like some fitness. I landed on dye your hair blonde, and I was like, and Dave Peter was like, "You're not going to do that." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, we'll do. Fuck you." So I dyed my hair blonde, I had my Eminem moment. And then yeah, I got in, and because I remember, I think it was like round six or something, and some of my mates at Batley were going, "Do you think you'll come back to Batley? Do you think you'll come back on Joe Red?" And I was like, "I'm not going back. I'm not going back. I'm gonna tough it out and I'm gonna get in." Um, and then I got my shot at Lee, and I think then I played the rest of the season, and most of the season after as well. So it was, yeah, there was some sharp learning curves. Don't get me wrong, like, and the big difference, people will say, "Oh, championship's more physical or whatever." The reason that it's more physical is because it's slower, and you have so much less time to think in Super League, especially if you get caught out of position or there's a quick play of the ball. Like you do not have time to think about. You just have to do. And that was what took a bit of getting used to at first, that you don't have time to kind of have a look what's going on and make a decision. You have to know, and you have to be listening to so many different people at once with in attack and defense. But so it was a steep learning curve, and I did make some mistakes, but obviously I did enough to keep my spot. And it was a funny one. Like Chesney was. Chesney, Chesney for me was a terrible coach, right?
Mm.
Chesney was a terrible coach. His man management was terrible. He was really lucky that he had like Lee Gilmore technically was a great coach. When Monners came in, was a great coach. Finney was at the back end of did a lot to do with the attack. Um, Chesney was like a personality hire. But he kept picking me. So I was like, I don't think me and him, not that we didn't get on. I just think it didn't really get me. Just in general, I think there's some people you kind of vibe with, and some people you don't. And there were certainly some people in that team that Chesney didn't vibe with, and some that he really did vibe with. But like he would turn up to team run through. We had flip flops on. He flip flops to team run through, and I remember turning to Finney because I played with Finney at Dewsbury back when I was like 17. So I've known Finney all my career, and I was like, "That's a joke. Is that a joke? Like that's a joke, right?" And he was like, "Welcome to Waking, mate." So it was. That's what I mean. It was such a weird club, like, and we would call it because obviously it's Wake Trinity. But whenever there was something that was really rats, like that, which was like shit standards that we don't really want, we'd call that cats.
Yeah.
That was cats behaviour. Um, and it was yeah, that was like a little bit of an in joke we had with the lads. But yeah, Wakey was it was a really steep learning curve. But I was really glad that first year I had JK Gilly always kind of took me under his wing, and I did a lot of work with Gilly, and he definitely helped make me a better player. And even like Big Dave Fafita, who was a completely different player to me, but we would have some good chats and stuff. And then people like Matty Ashurst and Danny Kermon and stuff were always really, people wanted you to do well, I think, which is I've been in teams where it's really clicky and people don't want you to do well. But that was never the case at Wakey.
One thing Chesney did do was he bought big. And I remember that because you were part of a massive pack. There was yourself, Dave Fafita, Anthony England, Craig Hewby, Mitch Allgood, the Aussie. We had some big fellas in that pack in 2017.
Yeah, yeah, we did. And Chubbs, Craig Hewby he was good value as well. A more miserable man you couldn't meet. But it was again, he was really good to me, was Chubbs, and helped me out, and you know, kind of helped me with the intricacies of Super League and the different the minutiae that are different and stuff. So yeah, we did have a good set. And again, Inge I played with at Dewsbury when we were younger, and I actually do remember Warren Jowett said to us when we were younger then, he said, you two will be Super League props one day. And I remember seeing what was after, and he said, he'd seen us on TV, and he said, I told you you'd both play Super League together, didn't I? It was, yeah, we did have some big lads like.
And yet, it seemed like a good, happy family as well, because you've touched on a few, as well as the big fellas we've mentioned, Matty Ashurst, Kermo. We've had Tinny Arona on, Carl Wood. Dean Hadley played that year as well. We had a good pack, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. We had a really good pack, and then you had like young Batch who was coming up. I mean,
Yes.
obviously, very much established now, but like when Batch came in, he was great. Yeah, we had some really good players in there. Woody, is good value on and off the field. So we did have a really good pack. And Matty Ashurst, outstanding. Probably one of the best Super League players not to be an England regular, I think, but we really did. We had a good team, across the board. We had a good team. You had Tom Johnson, Bill Tupu. We had Milky and obviously Finney in the halves, and Grixie played really well that year. Like we did have a really good team that year, and we stuck together as well. That was why we did well. Like we all really liked each other.
66 games at Trinity, mate. You scored one try. You remember it?
I do remember it was. Do you know what? I had a try disallowed against Hull, and it shouldn't have been disallowed. I was fuming. And Craig Hewby, to be fair to him, he said, "I've set you up about 4 times. You should have blood tries." Like, um, it was just, I don't know. I don't know if I got like white line fever or whatever. And it was the last game of that first season, and we were playing Wigan at home, and we ended up smacking them.
We did.
And there was a couple of times where I nearly got over, and then Sammy Williams made a break, and me, prop forward, were backing up, and he put it over. And what was good about that was, like, obviously I was chuffed to score, but everybody in that stadium who was anything to do with Wakey was chuffed for me to score as well. All the lads were absolutely buzzing. I think on the video it cuts to JK and Chesney who are absolutely buzzing as well, and then like all the stand kind of goes off as well. So it was a really really good. Yeah, probably my favourite try that I've ever scored, if I'm being honest.
Well,
Uh,
all the boys piled on you as well, didn't they? And it was
yeah.
just almost like if there was a Keegan Hirst movie, that'd be the last scene of the movie where you get the try and everyone's on your side.
I think it was because I was on for a nudie run and no one wanted to see me wafting me chopper about. So they were like, at least we don't have to see that. So they were all pleased about that. Yeah.
We started this podcast with that question about Trinity, mate, and we're just rounding off now. But when it came to an end, those 3 years at Trinity, what were your thoughts? Did you want to continue? Because obviously you went to Halifax and briefly back at Batley, but did you want to stay in the game, or did you kind of moved on and wanted to do something else?
Yeah, I wanted to stay. I wanted to stay at Wakefield, but that third year, Chesney kind of said, You're not going to get in my team." Yeah, and I couldn't really fathom it because I was like, "Well, I've played in your team pretty much solidly for the last 2 years, and we've done all right. Um, so I don't know. I don't know why he didn't really give me any particular reasoning. Um, and so he said, it was like Halifax will take you on loan. So I was like, okay. And there's part of me that goes, the part of me that thinks, well, should I have just stayed and battered it out? But I think I was a bit jaded with just sometimes how you get picked. It was like, oh, it's between you and so, and then, I would find out half an hour before the meet time, and I was like, it's no way to prep for a game. Like if you want somebody to play well, or you want any rugby player to play well, you treat them well, treat them
Mm.
like they matter, treat them like they're important. And I know that might sound a bit prissy or whatever, but if you think about anybody in any work environment, if you want someone to perform, they have to feel valued
Mm.
and like they're part of something. And just to be like, yeah, you're in, or no, sorry, you're not in, and it was just like really throwaway, and it had started wearing on me a little bit. I just thought it was really unprofessional more than anything else. But it also you start to question yourself, but then you'd have some people saying, oh, you should be playing, and then you'd have, the head coach saying you're not in. And so I was like, okay. And it was Simon Griggs was the coach at Halifax, and seemed really keen to have me. So I went on loan, and then I ended up signing there. But yeah, if Wakey had have offered me to stay, 100% I would have stayed. The only reason, and then obviously COVID happened, and GMC, the coaching business, took off in COVID. And I was like, oh, maybe I don't need to get beaten up anymore for a living. So, the business started doing well. And I was like, and I think the thing that finished me off was the whole Israel Folau thing.
Mm.
People might not remember, but Catalans, I had a call from Robert Elston, who was head of Super League at the time. And he said, how would you feel if Catalans signed Israel Folau? Bear in mind, all the Australian clubs had said we will absolutely not sign him because he said all this bad shit about gay people, about women, about abortions, about like it said it was frequent. So all the Aussie clubs have banded together and said we're not going to sign him because he's a shit bloke. Good for them. So then Robert Elson rung me and asked me that, and I said the reason that you're asking me is because you want me to make you feel better about a decision that's seemingly already made.
Mm.
I said I think it's shit. I said I think it's shit, and I think if it happens, it just goes to show that you don't care not only about me, 'cause it's not about me, but what you're saying to any LGBT person, any woman who's ever had an abortion, any of those who come to watch rugby league, he matters more. That's what you're saying. And he said, "Well, I don't think that." And I said, "Doesn't matter if you think that. Your actions speak louder than words." So I said, "You'll do what you want to do." But the fact that you are ringing me up to ask me shows that you don't know how to handle this situation.
Mm.
Um, and then Steve McNamara rang me up, and he said, "I understand that you're not particularly happy about this decision." I said exactly the same to Steve, and Steve had coached me in the academy at Bradford. So I had a semblance of a relationship with him. And I said, "You're ringing me up to assuage your conscience here. Do you agree with what he said, Steve?" And he was like, no, and he was like, Switzerland with it all. And I just said, "I am not going to make you feel better about this. I think it's shit what you've done." And I said exactly what I said to Robert Elston about what it means to other people. Um, and that was that. And then Ralph Rimmer rung me up as well, and I said, like, why are you letting this happen? Like, look at all the bad press that this is getting for our game. For what? For
Mm.
like, what is he bringing to the game? Is he going to bring massive sponsorship deals? What is he bringing other than bad press? Oh, well, I can't do anything because it'd be a restriction of trade. And I was just like, no, it's not, because you just don't offer him a contract in the first place.
Yeah.
You're not restricting a trade if you don't offer someone a contract and then renege on it. There's, that's one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. And that just kind of really pissed me off. I was like, because I just thought you actually don't all you care about is, for whatever reason, Catalan signing this player. It matters less to you than the fans. It matters less to you than me. And what annoyed me, because I'd be the first one to be wheeled out when they wanted to talk about diversity and inclusion. It'd be like, oh, Keegan, can you go talk about this? Of course I will. I owe Rugby League a lot. Rugby League has been great to me. I'm happy to do that. But then as soon as something came from the other side of things, they were like, nah, don't hung me out to dry. And I thought, and other people as well, other LGBT people, or even, I said, it's not even just LGBT people, it's people who are like brothers and sisters and friends of LGBT people
Yeah.
as well. It's like, it's not just about, you're ringing me up, but it's nothing to do with me. It's about all these other people. And that pissed me off as well. So I was like, you know what, if I don't need to do it, I'm not going to do it. And I ended up going back into 2023 and doing another year with battling. We ended up getting to Wembley in the 1893 Cup or whatever it's called. But and I'm glad I did that. But I've got it all out of my system now. But yeah, that was kind of why it ended. Really, it ended on a bit of a sour note, to be honest.
It's a big shame. You make a good point of even though not everybody's a part of that community, we're probably in a society now where everybody at least knows one person who is. So,
100%.
so it's not just, I might be, I might have a heterosexual relationship, but I know someone, I work with someone who is a lesbian, for example, or dad might know someone who's gay or lesbian. It's just the society we're in now. So it affects everybody, doesn't it? And I remember that at the time. I remember being really proud that the NRL had stood up to it. And then it's just like, all right, yeah, come into Super League, we'll look after you.
Yeah.
We've done
Well,
it with women beaters as well. I remember
yeah,
Robert Louis,
yeah.
we've done it forever. It's just a really big annoyance.
Yeah, we'll have all your reprobates and cast-offs and the thing is as well, and I genuinely believe this, rugby league is a sport that accepts people for who they are, and because we can't afford not to, black, white, brown, gay, straight, religious, not religious, we'll have you, because we need as many bodies as we can get, and the I genuinely don't believe that people care what someone looks like, how they live their life, what the sexuality is, religion is, whatever. They don't care, and I do genuinely believe we have a diverse culture. Especially, you look at the towns that we've got in rugby league, your Oldhams, your Wakefields, Batley. With large Asian populations, and people have to be inclusive and get on with other people who don't look like themselves, and so if you are a sport that is touting yourself as that, to then not only welcome but go out of your way to bring in someone who is anti that, you're literally shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
And I just found it so frustrating because there was no benefit, and it all came out in the wash because lo and behold, he signed for them, and then he told them some bullshit story and went over and signed for a Japanese rugby union team. And just rinsed Catalan for the money. And I was like, well, it serves you right, but who's lost out? Like we as a game lose out because we look like idiots.
Yeah.
And that's what was disappointing about it.
Do you think there's a lot of other men in sport, football, rugby league, whatever, that are gay and haven't come out?
I know there is in football. I don't know too much about rugby, to be honest. I've not had people reach out to me from rugby, maybe because I'm a rugby player. I don't know, but football, I've spoken to quite a few.
Mm.
I think though, I think a lot of it, people, because people say, oh well, there's 1 in 10 people are gay, so there must be 1 in 10 sportsmen are gay. But I would argue against that because if you're a kid and you're going to play sport and you don't feel particularly welcome for whatever reason, which you might not do, old school, don't be gay vibes in football and rugby. If you're a gay kid and you know you're gay, you're not going to stay there. You're going to go do something where you feel more welcoming. So there's probably not as many gay kids coming through at grassroots level. So I don't think it's the same as the cross section as the rest of society. But yeah, there's like I've spoken to quite a few footballers who are gay who don't want to come out, and I think as well. I would hope it'll get to a point where I used to go to the gay bars with the Wakey lads. They'd come to Leeds with me, especially like the younger lads. They didn't give a shit. Like literally didn't care. So I think you'll get to a point where you get lads who would just come out in the academy or when they're younger or whatever, and then they just are out, and you don't have that big song and dance that I had coming out, a bit later in life. But yeah, I think a lot of it is to do with grassroots, and then as you get more, coaches who manage the culture at grassroots level and say, we're not having kind of homophobic language and what have you, and it becomes more welcoming for, gay kids, then you probably will get more gay athletes in team sports. That's probably why a lot of them go to solo sports, I think.
Over to you, Dad, before we round off.
Sorry, I missed the text. My last question, Keegan, your GMC fascinates me. Just a short version. Tell us a little bit about it because I've seen you on social media, I've seen you on boats, I've seen you doing talking, life coaching workshops. Just tell us a little bit about it because it sounds fascinating.
Yeah, we do. I just call it performance coaching. So it's basically helping people perform at their best, physically, mentally, emotionally, career-wise. We work with people to to just be the best version of themselves, really. And that's like I said, I started in 2019, and it's just kind of evolved and grown. And we have clients all over the world now, all over the UK, all over the US. We have clients in Australia, New Zealand. We do in-person events where all the guys get together. We've got one in Leeds, one in Edinburgh in March as well. We're doing one in LA in April. So, it is global. And yeah, we're doing, it's something that I find very rewarding. Chris Anakin is our head coach. He works for us. He has, you know, his dad was gay, and so he has like a close relationship with the community. And we have incredible events, and it's really amazing to see people come in and they're timid and they're shy and they feel unfulfilled and like they're not getting out of life what they want to get out of it, and then working with us and being able to just have that bit of structure and support and community and be able to 10x every area of their life, really. And it's again, like I said, it's the kind of thing that I wish I'd have had when I was younger, that I could have just kind of I've always been a big believer in, I am where I am because of the coaches and the environments that I've been in. And I think sometimes you have to, I've learned this like with mentors as I've got older, is sometimes you have to pay to play and get involved, get yourself in those rooms. But it's all an investment in yourself is never a bad thing. And I'm really proud of what we've built and how we help people.
Brilliant stuff. Keegan, my last question. I'm quite a spiritual bloke. I live through that kind of medium, and I've just behind my screen here, people can't see even on the YouTube channel, but I have like a gratitude board, and I have lift different little quotes and my values as well. I change them every other month and whatnot as well. But the main one I've got up at the minute is based on happiness and inner peace. And I just wanted to read it out to you and then just ask you a question based off of that. So I have written at the minute, happiness depends on conditions being perceived as positive, yet inner peace does not. And that's a quote from one of my favorites in Eckhart Tolle. He said it in a New Earth. I think it was the book of New Earth or The Power of Now. I can't remember which one. But I just wanted to ask you, what brings you inner peace at this time in the present?
Do you know what? It's probably just getting out in nature at the minute. It's funny you asked that today because I've been talking about taking some time off work because I haven't had any time off for about 5 years where I've just like not worked. So inner peace is very much at the top of my priority list at the minute. But I always yeah, trying to disconnect. As you guys have said, I have a lot to do with social media, and I just find that we're constantly bombarded by outside things, the news, the state of the world, other people's problems, and I think it is just so important to be able to disconnect and be able to sit with your own thoughts. I practice gratitude and I journal and I do all stuff like that, but I feel like nothing works quite so well as I live up in Halifax, so there's loads of hills and rolling fields around me. So getting out with a dog in the fields and just listening to the birds' song, as twee as that sounds, I feel very much at home when I do that. So that's what I would say.
Good answer. It's funny actually. As we record this, Lent started yesterday, and I gave up Twitter for Lent. So I'm not going on Twitter for the next 40 days. I'm still free, like on Instagram every now and again, and our YouTube channel. But it's just that digital, like you say, that digital toxicity constantly, and you wake up and you're taking in everybody else's lives before you even taking your own lives. So I agree with that. I think nature and reading and taking in your own time is much more important as well.
100%.
Good stuff. Keegan, I think nothing sums up your life better than the story of you saying you were reading Lord of the Rings as a kid in your bedroom to then giving Gandalf himself a lift in your Peugeot 306. So, can you imagine such a book-ended life and it's still continuing, mate? So, thank you from us as well. Hopefully, we can maybe even have you on again on the podcast. This has been an absolute pleasure, mate. So, thank you from us and thank you from the Rugby League community and everyone who's listening to this for everything you do. And you should be proud of yourself and you're more than welcome back down to Bellevue at any time.
Thank you, lads. I appreciate you having me on.
Good stuff. Thank you, everybody, for listening to episode 258 of the Wakefield Trinity Heritage Podcast. You can find us all on podcasting platforms worldwide and follow us on our social media channels as well. Give us a like, share, and subscribe on our YouTube channel. Massive thank you to my co-host, Lee Robinson, and our brilliant guest, Keegan Hirst. I've been Jamie Robinson, and we will catch you all down the road.